Number 6, Mount Tabor, or come to Matthew 17. You may know this mountain as the Mount of Transfiguration, but it is called Mount Tabor as well. So Matthew 17, the Mount of Transfiguration. Matthew 17. After 6 days, Jesus took with him. Now, how many apostles does Jesus have? He's got 12. It's interesting that he only takes 3 with him, especially since this is such a significant event that occurs, that you're wondering, whoa, why didn't all 12 experience this? But only 3. He took Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and he led them up a high mountain by themselves. And there he was transfigured before them. In other words, before this, the apostles, James, Peter, and John, they're like, Jesus, he's just like one of us. He's just a normal human. Until he was transfigured into God. Until they realized, you understand, God became flesh. The Word became flesh. But now they see for the first time, whoa, this is no ordinary person. This is God's Son. So he's transfigured before him. Verse 2, he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. So that's why there's 5 people there. You got Peter, James, John, and then you got Moses and Elijah, who I happen to believe are the same 2 witnesses in Revelation. Now, while they're there, suddenly the Father appears or comes. And so let's see here. Verse 5. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them. And a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I'm well pleased." Now, God has said that before, but he adds something new here. He says something new to Peter, James, and John. He said something that ends with an exclamation point. What does God the Father say to those 3 disciples? Listen to him, right? Listen to him. Now, what does that mean? When God the Father says, you listen to him, does that mean, okay, I'll listen to Jesus, and then I'll kind of decide whether I want to follow it or not? Or does when God the Father say, listen to him, do you have a sense he's saying, you need to obey him? You need to listen and do what he tells you? Do you get that sense? Okay. So I call this the Mount of Sanctification. This is the mountain where Christians really discover who Jesus is and make a total surrender to make Jesus Lord and to obey him. Now, I think it's interesting that only 3 of the apostles went up and heard this message, and not all of them. A.B. Simpson, he was the founder of the Alliance, and many other godly people have said, yes, unfortunately, there are many Christians who won't go up Mount Tabor. By the way, here is Mount Tabor, the Mount of Transfiguration. It's a very unique mountain in the world, by the way. It's, and someone told me some information about this. It is called the Mountaintop. Say that loud? Yeah, that. Now that's obviously tongues. Can someone interpret that in English? It's a half a spear that rises abruptly from level land around it. And someone told me in the last service, they said, oh yeah, I know all about this. These mountains are very unique in that they never erode away. So looks exactly the same as when Jesus had his transfiguration on top of that mountain. But anyway, these godly leaders say there are many Christians who will not spiritually do Romans 12, to offer your body as a living sacrifice to the Lord and to say, Jesus, I'm going to follow you with my whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. I'm going to obey your word. I cannot tell you how many Christians I go, let's say I'm counseling with a Christian and they're stealing from work. And I go, you got to quit that. You got to stop that. God can give you the power. And they go, no, Pastor, I can't. Pastor, I am a Christian. I've asked Jesus to be my Savior. Okay, I believe you are a Christian. You go to church, you're in Sunday school, you're a Christian. And then they say something like, Pastor, we're not all fanatical like you. There are some Christians that are very fanatical. They go all out. I'm a Christian saved by grace, and I'm going to heaven. And I realize that my rewards will not be as great. But I just can't follow that of following the Lord all the way. I'm not ready to take up my cross, deny myself, and follow Jesus. They're saved. These people are saved. But they won't go up. I think it's when you realize, I just wish that people would realize that Jesus in you is not just a good man, he's not just a good teacher, he's not just a good prophet, he's God himself lives in you. And I know you might say, well, I think the commands, whether I have to honor my parents, I think there's lots of Christians who think these are options. I can choose, I can pick what I want to do. But this mountain, the Father says, you need to listen to him. You need to listen to him and make an all-out commitment for Jesus.